Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. Each week, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from women entrepreneurs who transformed their prestige prisons into daring entrepreneurial success stories. Now, here is your host, Lulu Nins.
Welcome to She Rebel Radio, episode 49, How to be Super Engaged and Menopoised with Nikki Gatenby. Nikki is the director of Gatensby Consulting, where she works with founders, board directors, and leaders to develop their strategy and bring their ideas to life. Nikki is also the co-founder of Menopoised, a new startup which uses acupuncture, Chinese medicine practice, and consultancy to change the lives of menopausal women all over the world. Nikki is also the author of the best-selling book, SuperEngaged. She has been featured by The Guardian, the Parliament Trust, and Corporate Rebels, and was previously the managing director of Propellernet, a multi-award-winning global digital marketing agency. Nikki, it's amazing to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's a beautiful day. I can see out over Brighton. It looks lovely. So, yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we all need the weather right now, don't we?
Don't we just? Yes.
Absolutely. And I'd love to kick off with your best-selling book called SuperEngaged, which is about how to transform businesses by putting people and purpose first. Can you tell us why you wrote that book?
It was really to show how successful you can be when you rip up the business rule book. You know, we've done things at Propellernet, the agency I previously ran, that are very different and kind of flew in the face of what you should be doing. And it's to show how compelling it is to run a human-centered business, kind of fly in the face of corporate mentality about growth, and profit, which is what we seem to have the world over. And unfortunately, we live in a world where only 30% of people are engaged in their jobs, meaning the other 70% have left their ingenuity at home, probably not bringing their full selves to work, possibly hoping, just not to get fired. And that's a massive waste of our collective human intelligence. It's pretty bad for business. So the agency Propellernet was run on a very different level. It was all about putting people of purpose on a par with profit, not people on purpose first and at the expense of profit, but all three together. And that way you have a better business. And off the back of it, we grew to be global, and we're one of the best places to work in the UK for 8 years running. So it shows that you can put people and profit on a par with people and purpose on a par with profit and have a really good business. And I've stood on stages and talked about this and shared the story. And a number of times people asked me if I would write a book. And I said so many times, I'm too busy to write a book. What I meant was I'm too terrified to write a book. But actually, I bit the bullet a couple of years ago and started capturing the story. And it was brilliant because we need to share that there's a different way to do business. We need to share there's a more human-centered way to do business, because it's my fundamental belief we should be able to enjoy what we do every day. Happy people do better work than miserable people. It's not rocket science, but it's rarely factored into the business plan. And if you put your people first, your business will be a better business and your profit will naturally rise. So I wrote the book, and it captures a decade of change, a decade of challenge and triumph. And from what I've been told, it's pretty compelling because it made it to be a bestseller, which was an amazing day. And unknown for me at the time, it was sort of the next step, springboard for the next phase of my career. So writing the book in the first place was to show that you can rip up the rule book, and it's actually created a whole new platform for us to talk about business in a different way.
Amazing. And did you know that at the time that it would create a platform for you? Did you just follow
I had absolutely no idea. It wasn't on my radar at all. I just thought, I need to capture this story, because I often got challenged about how we were running the business, about putting in employee engagement in the forefront as serious as our margins were, and things like planning to lose our best talent because people have choices, particularly talented people, they can move on. And starting with our purpose and our values, and actually having a bucket list business plan which brought people's dreams into the business and made them part of the business. People's side hustles became part of what we did, and to show that it wasn't the airy-fairy stuff. It actually made hard-nosed business sense to have really highly engaged people in the business, and our engagement levels around 90% instead of 30% globally, to make your business grow in a way that's sustainable. And that's what I was focused on, not the fact that it generates so much interest that people would get in touch with me and ask them to be part of their businesses in a non-exec capacity, be on the boards, coach their people. And that was really compelling for me. And it opened a whole new window of opportunity, which was brilliant.
Yeah, and there's kind of like two pieces there, I think, in terms of, so many, everybody having their businesses and employees sent home, where engagement is required to an even higher level, and how acceptable it is, to hate your job. When I left my job as a lawyer, I really noticed on the radio how it was counting down to Friday, and that was a totally acceptable way for the majority of people to live their lives, to not be engaged in what they were doing and to just desperately count down for the weekend.
Yeah, and I think COVID has made us question everything. It's made us question what we care about, health, well-being, safety, security, they've all come first. Who we are matters more than what we've got. And it's made us reevaluate, the role of the real heroes. We all know that those people have been hiding their capes for far too long. And it's turned people's lives upside down. So I think after the initial shockwave and the immediate anxiety and the personal safety fears, it's going to bring into question for a lot of us what we do every day and why are we spending our working hours doing something we're not engaged in. So I think when people return to work, they're going to return for safety reasons, for money, for security, and that's absolutely fine. Everybody needs to feel secure. But there's going to be a lot of movement in the job market, forced and actually volunteered, because people start to think, well, what am I doing with my life? What should I be doing that actually I am engaged with and I can make a difference to the world? So I think it's going to be an interesting time in terms of, as you say, people have been forced to work from home. Now more than ever, we need to be engaged in what we're doing because we've got some big problems to solve on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. So many big problems. And I think as well, in terms of for you, how that writing the book really created your next platform, but you didn't know that. And I think that's a really important message for people to kind of follow where you're at now, and that will open doors. And you can't always plan that out, can you?
No, and I don't think any of us, well, maybe Bill Gates knew about it, but I don't think any of us knew that COVID was coming. None of us could plan for that. Talk about a black swan moment. It threw everybody off course. And that's the point when you just have to dig in. You have to, resilience and adaptability are skills that we as humans, thankfully, have in spades. And we've shown that in terms of how we're going to be coming back from this crisis. And you can plan. Plans are great. But if you have a plan, also know it's okay to go off plan. And that's part of the fun.
Yeah, definitely. So much fun. What was that pivotal moment for you when you went from, no, I'm too busy to write a book, to actually, I'm going to write the book?
Great question. Our whole mission at Propellernet was to make life better. And it was all about, if we could make life better for our clients and their customers, we could make life better in the world and have a bigger global impact. And I was out in the Alps one day on a conscious business retreat, and I was chatting to a friend of mine, Naveed, and he said, the business story is so compelling, you really need to tell it, because if you're truly going to live your purpose to make life better, you need to write the story and get it out into the world rather than it being in the four walls of the agency. I was like, oh, you absolute sod, that you've got me. I've got to write it now, haven't I? So he was the catalyst for me setting it down. But it was such a big story in my head. I couldn't actually grapple with. I've done all these talks, and I've got about 100 slides that I share in various different guises for different talks, and I couldn't pull it into one story. So I knew I had to ask for help, and I found this brilliant guy, Wayne Fick, who is in the PR agency. He's a creative in a PR agency. And we just got chatting, and I said to him, tell me about some work that I know of yours that I would have seen. And he said, the London 2012 campaign? I was like, what, Inspire a Generation? You did that? And he's like, yeah. I was like, okay, so you know how to tell a story. And he helped me structure the book and get all these things, my hands are above my head floating around about all these things that were floating around above my head into a storyline. And then I could just freestyle and write as I wanted, which was lovely because I didn't feel hemmed in by the plan. The plan enabled me to freestyle, which was great. And I got the story down in about 18 months.
Amazing. Yeah. And by the sounds of it, you saw that the story was bigger than you, and actually there was a need for it to be out there on paper for people
Absolutely.
to use.
Yeah. And, I fronted it. It's got my name on the book, but it was everybody in that business coming together, being open about ideas, trying new things, having a really lovely risk profile. And I think that's because there was a lot of trust in the business, because if you trust the people around you, you're able to take more risks. And we need to do that more than ever right now. Again, back to engagement. People going back into businesses need to be able to operate in an environment of trust, because fear means we're not going to innovate. And if we don't innovate, we're not going to innovate ourselves out of this crisis. So I think that whole thing about it being bigger than one person, you are absolutely right. But you've got to have that ethos of being able to take risks together to be able to create change.
Yeah, so important, so important. And as an entrepreneur yourself, how do you stay super engaged? I feel like you've answered a bit of that, but with the work that you're doing, have you got any tips for that?
I think you need to, what you do needs to mean something, to stand for something, to make a difference. In the world feels very grandiose, but because if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing, and that's neither motivating or mobilizing for anybody. And for me, it's not super engaging to work only in the pursuit of money. Don't get me wrong, money's very important, and business and not-for-profit organisations equally need money to stay in the game. And that's the point. It's like having a car purely to put petrol in it. That's not the reason to have the car. It's the experience, the people you're travelling, and the journey and destination that are important. Fuel keeps the car on the road, and money keeps an organisation in business. But the purpose that they're in pursuit of is the most important. So I think it's knowing why you're doing what you're doing every day helps you to stay engaged, and making that purpose as impactful and positively as impactful as possible is what's going to keep you engaged.
Yeah, the power of why and knowing your purpose. And do you have any tips for the She Rebel radio listeners, inclusive, but mostly are women? Do you have any tips for women that are trying to find that, more purpose in the work that they do or the businesses that they run, that are feeling that maybe they've lost that or never had that in the first place?
Well, it's really interesting. I think, you just touched on it. Articulate your why, because at some moment in time, you would have had a strong why as to why you're in that business. And if it's only about making money, that's okay. It means you possibly need to look at it differently. But we all have a reason for doing what we're doing. If you can get back to your why and work out why it's important for you or not anymore, that will help you reconnect to the purpose in the business. And actually talking about it with other people makes a lot of sense, because if your whys are aligned, you'll have a better way of making that purpose real in the world. If your whys are misaligned, that can tell you a lot about the conflict that might be in your business. So getting clear on what you're doing and why you're doing it is so important. And then being able to measure the impact. It's all very well having a lofty ambition or a lofty goal or a lofty why, but if you don't know that you're doing anything to address that purpose and that need, then you won't actually feel fulfilled in what you're doing. So being able to identify it in the first place is a big thing, but being able to measure it going forward is another. And then engaging others with it, because if it's powerful enough, it can't help but be magnetic.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything that you have done over the years to, like a daily practice or something that you do to reconnect with yourself with that? Because even when we're clear about it, it can be so easily lost with, day-to-day life and distractions and all of that kind of stuff. Is there anything that you do to keep on track with that?
Great question. And I think running Propellernet was almost like military training. Sounds a little bit too over the top, but we talked about make life better all the time. We're taking this client on, make life better for them. Do we understand their business? Are we excited about it? Can we make a change for them? Is it going to be good for their business to work with our business? Will recruiting that person make life better for the rest of the people in this team? Will it make their life better? Can they reach their full potential? You kind of ingrain your purpose into how you make decisions, because that shapes the lens at which you see it through. And if it's just a piece of paper, it's a bit like people talk about values. If they're just a piece of paper in someone's drawer or a post on a wall and they're not lived, they don't actually mean anything in the first place. So I think you need to live your purpose, live and breathe it and talk about it, but actually to mean anything.
Yeah, and an essential word you used there was ingrained your purpose in all your decision making. And yeah, so often when people are stuck making decisions, potentially that purpose isn't ingrained.
No. And then you get lost. And if you don't have a decision-making framework, again, have a framework. You can always go off the framework for a reason, but it enables you to see clearly why you're doing what you're doing or why you're not doing what you're doing. The power of no is equally as powerful as yes. So it's great to know why you're doing something, because it just makes more sense when you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And several times it seems to have come up in terms of that, having a structure or, formula, but having freedom within that is so important, isn't it? It's having that mixture of both.
Yes, because I think if we know where we're going and we aligned with the people around us, you can then talk about going off the journey. And we often used to talk about mountains at Propellernet because our founders lived out in the Alps. And when you're new at something, you need a path and a map and a journey and guidance of how to get somewhere. But as you get more experience, you can freestyle. If you think about climbing a mountain in that sense, when you first start, for safety reasons, you need to be able to navigate. You need a map. You probably need a guide. But when you become an expert, you can go off-piste. You can go and do your own thing because you know how things work. So I think it depends on where you are in your journey as to how much of a plan you need.
Yeah. I'm tying that into my yoga practice. I used to follow the class. Now I'm like, I want to freestyle and do my own thing.
And it feels good, doesn't it? Freestyle is brilliant.
you can find more magic and flow in that, because you know the basic asanas and all of that. So but I love that. Yeah, follow the map and the guide at the beginning, and then you can freestyle.
Yeah.
And find your magic within that. So do you think, why do you think, and firstly, do you agree with that more women, women leaders, female founders, entrepreneurs, and female founded businesses, are they important at the moment? And if so, why?
Yes, I do believe that's important. I think we need a world of balance. I'm not going to make any huge political statements, but if we look at the way that the world is being run, there's an incredible amount of conflict. And a lot of it comes from masculine and some feminine energy, but a lot of it comes from world leaders in conflict. And I think women bring a different energy. And we have an incredible example here in Jacinda Ardern in the style she's leading New Zealand right now. But we bring a different energy in terms of nurturing, listening, and collaborating. Men and women alike are resolving conflicts and finding profits and redefining success. But female focus can bring a more human-centered lens in which we see the world. And at a time where humans the world over have never relied so heavily on each other to get through a crisis, that feminine energy and female values can significantly change the outcomes. And to go back to Jacinda, I think it was the 21st of March, she delivered an 8-minute televised statement to the nation about clear guidelines on how they're going to defeat the virus and save life. And her powerful parting words were picked up around the globe as she said, please be strong, be kind, and unite against COVID-19. It was such a sort of rallying cry that went around the globe as this is a way to do it. I think this morning it was reported that there are no cases now of coronavirus in New Zealand, and I know they have less population density and it's a different issue in different countries, but the way she approached it and the fact that she talked to the children in one way of the nation and talked to the adults in another and just refined her message. And I think it says a lot about her as a female, but also as a leader, in the fact that she felt comfortable to do that. And I think we can take a lot of learnings from that.
We can. I just think, the way that she communicates and, other female leaders is kind of like less, how to put it, in the UK, it's like, we're at war with coronavirus, that we are at war and we've got to create dividing lines and, that there is conflict even in the language.
Yes. Yeah. And it breeds the same style of thinking. Whereas if you change the language, because the way that we think, the way that we feel is all so intertwined with our language, we can have a different outcome. And she's proven that the outcome that she has reached is very, very positive in a world that's actually hurting a lot right now.
Language carries so much power, and we have to we can't solve problems with the same thinking that created them in the first place.
No, and there's, I think you would have to have lived under a rock not to have heard of Brené Brown and the power of vulnerability now. But I think vulnerability is so important because at the moment, people care less about targets, profits and sales. They care about people, they care about each other and shared experience. And the ability as a leader to be vulnerable is so powerful because, vulnerability builds trust in personal relationships as well as professional. And it means back to that thing about taking risks, sharing thoughts and feelings and being humble. And if you're vulnerable in a professional environment, it's so unnatural for people because workplaces can be filled with competition, fear and blame. You actually create a different dynamic and it enables people to feel safer and to innovate and take those risks in a way that maybe we couldn't have done before.
Yeah. And, so important the conversation at the moment as well in terms of inclusion and just talking about Jacinda there, including children in the conversation, which, with political statements and things that the way that we certainly do it here just feeds more fear into children.
I don't know about you, but I've seen young children of friends, and some of them are very fearful and they don't want to go near other people. And that's good from a short-term safety perspective. But we've going to have a nation of children that have inherited this fear of others when in fact they should be able to be free and feel that they can trust others. It's almost an invisible dividing line between humans, and we need to change that.
Yeah, we need to be, I think, so careful about that. I, as a defence lawyer, dealt with a lot of parents being prosecuted for their children not going to school as teenagers. And what we discovered for all of those children was something really significant had happened between the age of 4 and 8, so their dad had left home or something. So they'd associated school with that negative experience in their life, and being a coach and all of that now certainly makes more and more sense. So I do think there are going to be potential problems, as you say, with kids, thinking and feeling that other people are a risk.
And we just need to recognise it and do something about it, not brush it under the carpet. Let's get the elephant out of the room and talk about it and make it a thing that we address, rather than just that stiff upper lip. Oh, it's all going to be okay. We'll go back to normal. We're not.
Yeah. And it's even, for us as grown-ups, like all of a sudden, walking around with a mask on has become the look of 2020. But again, the impact that's going to have on kids at significant ages is going to be vast.
Yes. So we need to, where we can, wrap our arms around them and let them know it's going to be okay.
Absolutely. So Menopoised is your new business. It's created by women for women. Why is that critical right now?
Yes, Menopoised. This is so exciting. Our mission, our why, is to change the lives of women the world over by supporting all women to have a positive menopause naturally. And why is that needed? Well, 100% of women go through menopause. 80% will have life-limiting issues that directly affect mental health and relationships. Very few doctors are specifically trained in menopause unless they elect to, and rarely are we poised and prepared for such an impact with so little knowledge, and it's simply not talked about. And our whole social structure isn't around women and their life stages. It's around how we work as a society, and very commercially driven and growth driven, and very much led by men. And this isn't an anti-men approach. It's a whole society needs to look at what is actually happening in the world. And menopause is the last taboo. Lord knows why, because all of us are going to go through it. Half the global population are going to have menopause, but it's shrouded in silence. So I believe we as women need to take up this mantle and blow the taboo apart, because we're probably the most qualified to do so. It's not an intergenerational conversation. My grandma never spoke to me about it. I already had conversations with my mum about it, and we get on brilliantly. And we've been going through menopause for the last 100 years, but only next year, 2021, is going to be the first year that menopause is going to be on the curriculum as part of secondary school sex education. I find that crazy, because we've been having menopause for over 100 years. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't normalise it, it will be continued to be shrouded in secrecy. And even in the workplace, only 3% of organisations in the UK are educating their workforce about menopause. And that's critical for our society and our ability to thrive, because there are so many women who are in higher positions, who are on the board, who are founding their own businesses, and they're going to need support to thrive. The fastest growing demographic of the workforce is women over 50. And also women are needing to work longer because of pension changes. They've got to work longer to earn money to be able to provide for their lives. So it's vital we tackle this. And I think, as I said, women are the most qualified to do so. And in terms of how many, well, just in the UK, in 2019, 4.3 million women between the age of 45 and 60 were employed in the UK. That means there are 4.3 million women in the UK about to start, are right in, or have been through the changes of the perimenopause or menopause, and all the joy that it will bring. Those will suffer in silence, and it's a huge ticking time bomb, because 1 in 10 women are thinking of leaving their job because of the issues they have to cope with, and 1 in 4 actually do. And you have to do the maths. That's over 1 million women with their life, their work, and their security at risk in the UK. We have to do something to change that, and I believe as women we can.
Yeah, and that coupled with the fact as women, statistically earn less per hour or salary, and within their businesses as well, and we live longer.
Yes.
Yes. That in terms of financial needs and stuff for that security and safety is just not an option. Why do you think? What's your interpretation in terms of why this has been such a taboo subject?
It's difficult. It's hard to talk about. People, I mean, even, before I got to my mid-40s, I didn't really know that much about the menopause, because it's just not on the agenda. It's really interesting, though, that maternity is on the agenda, and it's brilliant that it is, and there's so much protection for people at any stage of their life. But maternity and becoming a mother is something you can choose to, or you may not be able to do. It's so that you may or may not have a child. But 100% of us are going to have menopause. And I find that interesting that we've only addressed one part of a huge change in a woman's life, which is maternity, probably because it becomes earlier within a woman's work life than we have talking about menopause. Now, it's really becoming an issue now, and it should have been an issue years ago, because women are staying in the workforce longer for all the reasons we've said. I just think it's because it's hard. There are so many symptoms, and there are so many things that we find difficult to talk about. Mental health has only really started being talked about in the masses recently. And the menopause has such an impact both physically and mentally. It's a big thing to talk about. but it doesn't need to be.
No, do you think, similarly, I'm very open in talking about menstruation as well, and, structure my business around my cycle. And, I know where my power weeks are. I have more in my diary in that time. And that would have been so empowering had I been able to do that when I was a practicing lawyer. And I don't think I would have burnt out quite as quickly. But do you think, and certainly my younger self would have seen that as a weakness, if I couldn't do the 9 to 5 and all the long hours and stuff. But I quite often joke in terms of, I think women, are more productive in those 2 weeks than men are all month. If we're allowed to structure things in a way that feels good to us. Do you think traditionally as women, we have seen menstruation and menopause? I'm nearly saying menopoised. It's a very catchy name. That we've seen that as a weakness. And we've been kind of conditioned by society to see that as a weakness. So we've kind of ignored it ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's kind of been that thing that's been hidden. It's the thing you don't talk about. We have had Tampax and all the other bits and pieces you need for menstruation in the toilets at Propellernet for years. And sometimes people are a little bit shocked in a good way. But I did have one gent go to me, someone's left their Tampax in there. I was like, yeah, we put it in there. You might not need it, but somebody else might. So I think it's one of those things that, for years, women have I've done it, hidden their Tampax up their sleeve to go to the toilet. Why are we hiding this thing that happens to half the planet every month? It's quite incredible, but we've been complicit in that. And I think we just need to do something different.
Yeah. Love it. Do something different, ladies. Absolutely. So how does Menopoised work? How is that going to change the trajectory for women moving forward, in their lives, in their businesses, in their positions of leadership whilst experiencing the menopause?
Okay, thank you for that question. Well, menopause, we'd love it to be a way of life and something that people talk about alongside their menopause. For now, it's been inspired by a great friend of mine, Jo Darling, who's a brilliant acupuncturist specialising in the treatment of breast cancer. And those who have breast cancer are often thrown into early menopause because of the impact of chemotherapy. And I had no idea around this until Jo and I started talking. And that's a lot to cope with all at once. If you've got breast cancer, you're having chemotherapy and you get thrown into menopause. So Jo has been working with a clinical oncologist to support women with menopausal symptoms. And she has an 80% success rate in reducing the main issues around hot flushes and night sweats and all the stress and anxiety that goes with it. Because if you're trying to recover from cancer treatment, you need to be feeling strong. And if you can't sleep and you're having hot flushes and your anxiety is through the roof, it's not going to help. And she has, as I say, an 80% success rate in reducing those issues for women, the heat of the menopause in the main. And she had a light bulb moment and she said, I'm menopausal myself. Surely if I can help those with medically induced menopause or early onset menopause, I can help those in natural menopause too. Yeah. Now, I'm very receptive to acupuncture and I'm a huge fan of how it works with your body and it works really brilliantly for me. I'm sure there's listeners who've got a range of experiences with it. And I went to see Jo for her to help me with my hands because I can't open jars, or I couldn't open jars, and she helped me immensely by needling my hands with the pain. And she started talking about her ideas for women with natural menopause and to help with the heat of that. I mentioned I was having hot flushes, and she had said the most amazing response. She said, "Why don't you become part of the team who is trialing my new products? I'm having these trials going through. Why don't you trial one of them?" I was like, great. I was having 10 hot flushes a day. My hair was getting wet. I was sitting in board meetings with sweat going down my back, and I'm quite a strong character, and I didn't want to say anything. My fellow board members are lovely people, and I just didn't want to say anything. It was bloody awful. So Jo included me in the trial of one of the products, which is the Menopoised menopause magnet. And you place the magnet on the back of your neck in a point used by Chinese medicine for thousands of years to release heat from the body. And it stopped my flushes within 24 hours.
Amazing.
And I was beside myself. Now, not everybody has that result so quick or so ending, but it was kind of validation for me that this had a lot of potential. So ran a small trial that was validated by Sussex University and Sussex Innovation Centre, and the efficacy rate of the product was continuing at 80%. So in 80% of the women on the trial, it's reduced or stopped their hot flushes, which is amazing. So that was great. It changed my life. And Jo and I continue to talk about it. And we just have one of those moments. And I just come back off sabbatical in February this year. And we soon went into lockdown in this country. And Jo couldn't practice as an acupuncturist. I wasn't doing the consulting work I was doing to the same degree. And we just had, in a weird backdrop, this gift of time to bring Menopoised to market. Jo often jokes that I say I liked it so much I bought the company, but we're co-founders of Menopoised. And we really think that we've hit on something that can help millions of women, it stops Jo being the limiting factor in terms of the hours of the day she has to treat people, and it enables women to have a choice in how they deal with some of the issues of menopause and how they can approach it naturally. Because there are other alternatives out there. There's HRT and there's other things that you can take, but this is a different approach and can help women look at it in a different way. So Menopoised right now is a range of acupuncture inspired products that we're bringing to market, and we're launching pretty soon.
Very exciting. And I just, the pandemic, with all the awful things that have happened around the world, has also given a lot of people a gift of, the gift of time in terms of actually looking at, things differently and having the time to create incredible businesses like this that has an opportunity to impact so many women all around the world.
Yes, and we keep saying to ourselves, this has happened for a reason, obviously not COVID, but us having time together, and it's just connected in such a great way, and we've been able to focus 100% on getting this right. And it just feels like one of those moments where whenever we talk to people about it, particularly menopausal women, and they're supporting men, but particularly menopausal women go, oh my God, please, can I just have the magnet now? Gimme. There's a need for it, which is wonderful. We've got pre-orders coming in already, and it feels like there's a huge momentum behind it. And we've talked to friends in far-flung places, so New Zealand, Australia, Canada and America. And again, because it's not talked about, when you do talk about it, they get this wonderful rush of almost like gratitude of thank goodness for opening the conversation. And you also have something that might help. Brilliant. So it feels like we're in a really positive space right now, and we can really, as you say, help a lot of women around the globe.
Yeah, and as you say, in a twofold way of one, opening up this, conversation which has to be had, and secondly, with the magnets themselves. And I know, at the beginning of lockdown as well, everyone was talking about, there's going to be a baby boom, but it's actually like lockdown business babies.
Creativity boom, yes.
Which I'm far more excited about seeing what happens there. So incredible. So how can we support you at She Rebel Radio with the launch of Menopoised, and what do we need to know about to see what's happening on your launch date, which is the 19th of June, I believe?
It is. Thank you for that. Yes, we'd love for you to help us shout this from the rooftops. We've got a number of things going on that day. There's quite a lot going on social media. So if you look at hashtag Menopoised, you'll see who's talking about it and what they have to say. And if anyone's struggling with issues of menopausal heat, or a woman who is, we'd love to help. So come on over to the website, which is www.menopoised.co.uk. You can get in touch with me, Nikki at Menopoised. Nikki is spelled Nikki. Or if you have any questions specifically in relation to Chinese medicine and our approach, Jo is our expert acupuncture and herbalist from that perspective, and she's at jo@menopoised.co.uk. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Menopoised, or look on LinkedIn and just Google search for Nikki Gatenby. Give us a follow, give us a like. There's some information up there, and we're right here for you ladies, and you're supporting men, because this is about all of us and we're all in this together.
Yeah, definitely. And we will put all your social media links below. And I can already think of a number of friends that incredible friends who run businesses, etc., that will need this information. I'll be sending them the episode for sure. So thank you so much. Anything else you want to share before we go?
Good luck, everybody. It's going to be a whole new world out there. There's going to be so much creativity, and actually I'm quite excited about where we can go in the future. So thank you for letting me share my story. It's been really good fun.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for being an amazing guest, Nikki.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to She Rebel Radio. And before you go, I wanted to share a personal invitation to you for our Secrets to Self-Actualization webinar on the 23rd of June at 1 p.m. UK time. As we continue to navigate a degree of worldwide uncertainty, it's really essential for you to figure out the steps in answer to your call for more. And during the webinar, we're going to learn what self-actualization is, why it matters for women in particular right now. We're going to look at how you can understand what's blocking your personal self-actualization process, and we're going to hear top tips from Camilla Pearson, founder of the Float Spa, from her journey into more purpose and impact. As you all know, recently I've been talking a lot about women self-actualizing and feeling that call for more freedom, more personal growth, more greater self-expression, more conscious awareness, and to work with greater purpose and impact. And I think we can all agree what we're seeing in the world world right now is that there is a need for this now more than ever. And just as a message and side note from me, that I support all women in their self-actualization process, all women in their self-actualization process, and all women equally. So please join us for the webinar, which you can find at www.lulumins.com/self-actualization. Let's have the conversation as always. It will be great to see you there. And I've got some incredible guests coming up on She Rebel Radio over the next few weeks, consecutive guests on the show, sharing their journeys of self-actualization and loads of other top tips for you as well, before we move into a series of solo shows following some incredible guests that we have coming up on She Rebel Radio. Thank you so much, as always, for listening, and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced and hosted by women's advocate and coach Lulu Mins. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. You can find Lulu Mins on Facebook and LinkedIn at Lulu Mins, and on Instagram at LuluMins_biz. Until next week, keep rebelling against the rules and designing success your way.